I know by this time of the year, the channel pretty much becomes Lego reads articles, and people are gonna go out there and say, man, there's no real things to talk about, and that's kind of the point of the off-season, man. There's no news. So, we gotta go to articles like this one on Colorado Hockey Now for our conversations, because that's kind of what the vibe that I try to bring on this channel is, you know? It's conversational things about hockey. Not really me telling you how smart I am and how good my opinions are, but I'm just kind of going out there saying, hey, look what I read today. This is an interesting topic, isn't it? So that is what we're doing here on this piece as we review this Colorado Hockey Now article published by Adrian Dater. You might remember Adrian Dater as the guy who asked Nathan MacKinnon last year, Nate, we know you're a gamer, and yeah, if you could fill in the blanks there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But he published this piece earlier in the week about Jonathan Toews, asking if he could be a NAZEM KADRI replacement for the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the last video on the channel was also talking about NAZEM KADRI. Long story short, he's a good player. He was a 100-point pace guy for Colorado. He's leaving the team, and he's likely going to sign, let's say, somewhere in New York in the next few days. So, for Jonathan Toews, this is an interesting conversation to open up about him potentially being a NAZEM KADRI replacement for this Colorado Avalanche squad that recently won the Stanley Cup. Now, I wanted to read the first few paragraphs of this Adrian Dater article because it does kind of paint the picture as to where he's coming from and kind of gives a little bit of context as to how everything has unfolded this way. I really don't try to clickbait too much because, you know, I have some standards and quaint old journalistic notions that you shouldn't do that. No jokes, please. Hashtag, I don't think I can say the same because as a YouTuber, clickbait is part of the art. And yeah, if you're watching the video, it means that the clickbait worked. But hell, it's July 30th, it's actually August 6th right now, and we're sitting around waiting to see what happens with NAZEM KADRI, and this is a website devoted to all things Avalanche. So there you go, NAZEM KADRI, potentially gone, whatever. This is the next paragraph in the piece. First off, I've heard absolutely nothing that this could or will happen. But secondly, Jonathan Toews, captain of the team, does not seem too thrilled with what's going on with the Chicago Blackhawks in the last few months, roster-wise. The team has traded away some really good young players such as Alex DeBrincat, Brandon Hagel, and Kirby Dach in moves that were heavily criticized for not getting enough back. Toews told Mark Lazarus of The Athletic, at the end of the day, we're talking about a 5+ year process according to Kyle Davidson, the GM. So that part of it doesn't sound appealing to me at all. I can't speak for Patrick Kane, but I definitely feel that the amount of turnover our team has gone through every single year these last 3 or 4 years, that's where it really, really gets draining and exhausting. Now, those comments are not new. We made a video a few weeks ago talking about what Jonathan Toews said to The Athletic and how he's upset with the way and the direction the Chicago Blackhawks are trending downwards. But at the end of the day, this opens up the door to any rumblings of a trade. So, here you have a player who doesn't sound like he wants to be a part of any rebuilding process, who doesn't seem to be having any talks whatsoever about signing an extension with the Blackhawks, who has 1 year left in his contract at $10.5 million a season, who will be a UFA after this coming season. Sounds like a guy who, if I'm Avalanche GM Chris MacFarland anyway, I might be interested in as a possible replacement for KADRI, who remains unsigned. I wonder if Jonathan Toews might waive that full no-move, no-trade clause to come to the defending Stanley Cup champions who might have an opening at second-line center. And then there is the whole, okay, if you wanted to make sure you could fit Toews under the cap, you would trade him at 50% salary retained and send away another player to a roster player, that is, over to Chicago to make sure that you actually can make the money work in order for Toews to play with his younger brother, Devon. Now, that last part is a joke, because they're not actually brothers, but it's kind of funny that they do have the same last name in the same way. The rest of the piece pretty much goes over the fit, whether or not it actually would be a scenario that would work out. Chicago, though, has a very strange situation, and as a result, you have players like Kane and Toews that are at the forefront of discussions like these, seemingly every other day. It's no secret that Jonathan Toews has been a very accomplished and very competent hockey player in the past. It's just this recent season definitely did not see the highlights of his career. I mean, he had 37 points in 71 games played. I get it, he's coming back after a season where he didn't play at all, so let's give him a pass here for a second. But Toews is 34 years old, and he definitely isn't in the prime of his career, quote-unquote, anymore. This article brings up the idea saying that, hey, Jonathan Toews might actually bring a very good presence, he's a true competitor, he's got leadership skills, he's a good face-off guy, he might not be the most productive player offensively, but would his presence be too much on a team that just won a Stanley Cup? I doubt it. I bet Toews would come in and just defer to Gabe Landeskog and be one of the boys. That actually is a pretty interesting idea as well. The idea of Jonathan Toews coming over to a team like Chicago and no longer having to be, quote-unquote, the guy. He's been the captain of the Blackhawks ever since 08-09, so that is literally over a decade of being the captain of an NHL team. He knows a thing or two about being a leader on the ice and talking to the referees about calls and all that stuff, so him potentially going to a team like Colorado where he's no longer the quote-unquote big dog. It is an interesting idea, and it does pose itself the philosophy that says that, hey, maybe Toews under a more reduced role could actually get a few more points, could actually play a little bit more relaxed, and actually be a little bit more effective than he had been when he was the mainstay guy in Chicago. Now, this is where the article gets interesting. Who would the Blackhawks get in return? Well, first off, Adrian Dater does not expect it would be Sam Girard. He wrote a couple of weeks or so ago that, based off of his understanding of things, he is not being offered by the Avalanche to clear cap space for KADRI or anyone else. JT Compher? Yeah, I could see it. He's an Illinois native who grew up a big Blackhawks fan with 1 year left in his deal before he goes to UFA status. His $3.5 million cap space would, in fact, open up enough room for Jonathan Toews, assuming Chicago eats a good portion of his salary. Now, that's unfortunately it. That's all that Adrian Dater goes out there and says could be a possible return piece, and I'm sure Blackhawks fans would be outraged if that's all they got for a franchise icon, but they don't have a lot of leverage here. He's a 34-year-old guy who has seen better days with a monster cap hit who could go anywhere he wants after this coming season. Now, to me personally, if you were to trade Jonathan Toews 1-for-1 for JT Compher of all people, while I was a very big fan of everything Compher did in the postseason for Colorado this recent Stanley Cup victory, I mean, look, you're not trading away JT Compher for Jonathan Toews. Maybe in terms of the on-ice value and what these players are actually worth when it comes to their dollar amounts and the amount of points they get, it is an equal conversation. Compher is 27 years old. He had, 33 points in 70 games last year, which is very similar to what Jonathan Toews did, actually, albeit a little bit worse. But I think the biggest argument against this idea is just, Jonathan Toews is Jonathan Toews. Would you really trade somebody that's been that important to your franchise for nothing? I mean, this isn't Vegas we're dealing with here. They're not trading away Pacioretty and Marc-Andre Fleury for nothing again. This is Chicago, and to be fair, Chicago has been very fishy the past few years as well when it comes to how they're run, but at the same time, I mean, you're pulling my leg if you try to convince me that they would do it again, right? Jonathan Toews for JT Compher, that's it? I'm not really too sure. Maybe on paper it actually works out, and this is a move that actually could provide some significant value for either team involved, but at the end of the day, JT Compher was a pretty good player for Colorado in the postseason, and Jonathan Toews still is a shell of his former self, yes, but still a good face-off guy, good defensive presence and all that, a good passer too. So at the end of the day, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this article on Colorado hockey. Now, let's just finish up the piece and go over Dater's final thoughts on the matter. If the Avalanche lose KADRI soon, do they want to just try and tread water at his position all season with other solutions, like trying Mikko Rantanen at second-line center or Alex Newhook? I don't think I like the idea of Rantanen as a second-line center. He's a big winger who can play up and down the wall and do heavy damage. He's been a winger most of his entire life. Alex Newhook could well become a great second-line center, but it feels like it will be a little too rushed in this case. Jonathan Toews as a replacement for KADRI in the short term, I like the sound of that. What about you, Avalanche fan? Singular, not plural, because it's interesting how he's writing to one Avalanche fan in particular, but either way, do you like the idea of Toews to Colorado? This definitely is not in the same territory as Patrick Kane to Colorado, for example, because that has a lot more flair and pizzazz behind it, since Kane is a lot better of a player than Jonathan Toews is right now. But Toews, under the right circumstances, I definitely do think still has some value and can be more valuable in more ways than one, should you give him a different type of NHL role next season. So, Colorado fans, Chicago fans, tell me in the comments all your thoughts about the entire trade situation that we're dealing with over here. Do you like this idea? Do you not? Tell me in the comments all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.